right, a very good morning to you. It's quite chilly right here in Nairobi, so I hope you're keeping warm wherever you're watching us from. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Your World, and my name is Winnie Lubembe. And of course, the conversation today, I mean, pretty much all the conversations that we have here, are important, and all of us should also, know about. But today is specifically important because we're talking about immunization and how important it is, and especially for the children and, when it comes to pregnant women as well, because vaccines are the world's safest method to protect children from life-threatening diseases. And for over 2 centuries, vaccines have safely reduced the source, or the scourge rather, of diseases like polio, measles, and smallpox, helping children to grow up healthy and happy. However, for the first time in 3 decades, the world has witnessed the largest sustained backslide in childhood vaccination. So, as a result, some 25 million children are now missing out on life-saving vaccines every year, placing them at a risk from devastating and entirely preventable diseases like measles and polio. So what is it, or what will it take for all of us to get back on track and ensure that we have all the children vaccinated? That is what we want to talk about today, because again, every end week, the last week of April is usually World Immunization Week. Vaccination, immunization, more or less the same thing. So World Immunization Week this week, and of course today again, the Ministry of Health is also launching the same, and that is Immunization Week. So like I said, the question is, what will it take for us to get back on track and make sure that we have all the children vaccinated? We have a special panel to help us with that conversation. Of course, joining me in studio, we have Dr. Ann-Peter Lomole, who's a consultant pediatrician and infectious disease specialist. Perfect person to handle this conversation. So good to have you this morning.
Thank
you look so lovely in green.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And really, thank you for bracing the cold in the morning hours to be with us this morning. Yeah. And of course, we also have Dr. Collins Tabu, who's an immunization specialist from UNICEF Kenya Country Office. It's so good to also have you, Dr. Collins. I know you were trying to get situated. You okay now?
I am good now. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for, again, joining us this morning. And I'm just going to begin with you very quickly, Dr. Collins. Again, like we said, 25 million children are actually missing out on vaccination every year. Could you just paint that picture for us so that before we even get to understand, immunization and how important it is, and when do you start, immunizing your children? Let's just take a look at what is happening in the country and, the globe as well.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me here today. Like you did observe, 25 million children globally are missing out on immunization. Mm-hmm. Now, this is one too many. Okay. As you'll observe, there's 6 million more children than that are now missing out on immunization. All right. And this is due to the backsliding as a result of the COVID-19 impact. Mm-hmm. So overall, we do have 67 million children who have missed out either partially or fully over the period of COVID-19 vaccinations, and 48 million of these have missed out fully on vaccines. Right. This is worrisome globally, especially that now children are more at risk of dying from vaccine-preventable diseases that would otherwise be prevented. These are diseases like polio, measles, pneumonia, diarrhea, meningitis, so to speak. In the country, for Kenya, over the course of COVID, we have about 600,000 children who've been missed so far with life-saving vaccines. They are now not protected from killer childhood diseases. If we look over the course of the year, like for the year 2022, we do have about 178,000 children who've been missed so far. This is a bit one too many. So we're marking this World Immunization Week basically to highlight the importance of vaccines and be able to highlight and support the government efforts to be able to bring back these children that have been missed with vaccines into care and restore the immunization coverage to what it was before COVID, and then work to strengthen the immunization system so that they're more resilient to the pandemic shock so far. If these children Yes.
Okay.
If these children that have exist in clusters, we then risk huge outbreaks within the country.
Okay. And then, of course, we know, again, as UNICEF, you're very, very hands-on just to make sure that, those ones who have missed, actually, get the vaccines, because, like you said, some actually miss completely and others partially. And Dr. Anne, is this a case that you see more often where children will, parents or guardians, will take their children to get vaccinations, but then up to a certain point they're like, see they've been vaccinated, see they're okay right now. Is this something that we deal with, a lot, which is like one of the challenges that we're experiencing in the country?
Yeah. In terms of vaccination, sometimes it also even depends on what number the child is. Firstborn children tend to get most of the vaccines because parents are very particular about getting them exactly what is needed for those children. The subsequent children might end up not receiving all the vaccines because, with time, parents don't really take into account the fact that, they should get all the vaccines. But at least for I'd say the first 6 months or 9 months, many parents do bring their children for those vaccines. Thereafter, it becomes a little difficult because now they start asking, okay, do I really need to get this vaccine? And quite a number of them are not really paid for by the government, so they have to pay them as private vaccines, and that cost also becomes an issue.
A bit of a challenge. At what age? Like you said, first 6 months is where there's a bit of a discipline, right?
Yes.
9 months, good. But then after that is where you start experiencing a bit of a sluggish when it comes to vaccines. So how much of a concern then is this to you, first of all, as a pediatrician, before we even take a look at how then that affects, the entire population?
It's definitely a concern because, within the first 9 months, the children have received a number of vaccines that will cover for some of these diseases that are associated with the highest mortality and morbidity in children. However, of course, there are quite a number that you're going to miss out if you stop at the 9-month mark. The meningitis vaccine is very important because we are currently in the meningitis belt. So that's a vaccine that needs to be given. Varicella vaccine, chickenpox, is something that affects children quite a lot, and if they get it at later ages, then the disease is quite severe at later ages. So people who've not been exposed or who've not been vaccinated then suffer the severe consequences of the disease. So it's difficult to actually say that there are vaccines that are not necessary. I believe that actually all vaccines are necessary. If you are at risk of that disease, then you should get it. And unfortunately, because of the current situation of Africa, Kenya, basically the lower and middle income countries, then resources become an issue, access become an issue, and you can't really blame parents if they don't really complete the vaccination schedule. So we have to find ways to ensure that it's accessible to them. And if the resources are the issue, then we find ways of either subsidizing for the private vaccines or, as the government and certain institutions are doing, providing them at a very low cost or at no cost to those who need it.
And I like the fact that you're really emphasizing that all vaccines are important. And I think with the onset of COVID, and even just during during the pandemic period, there was a lot of mis and disinformation as far as vaccines are concerned. A lot of people are talking about this one year, has taken only a year, and these other ones take like 10 years and all those things. But we'll also address that, like how much of a challenge, is mis and disinformation when it comes to vaccines in general. We're also talking about the HPV vaccine. There's also the malaria vaccine, and especially for the HPV, there was also a bit of a concern from parents, as far as that is concerned. So we'll address that in a while. But let's just come back to the basics, understanding immunization, right, for the children and what the schedule looks like. Do you want to talk on that very quickly?
So in the simplest terms, what immunization is trying to prepare the immune system for a second, third, fourth encounter with a particular infection or infectious agent. And how it's done is usually through vaccination. So what happens is that you introduce something into the body that the body recognizes as foreign, and the body mounts what we call an immune response, which is basically a way that the body fights an infection.
Okay.
And this immune response then is also put in the memory of the body, in terms of the body producing what we call memory cells, so that the next time that this individual encounters that infectious agent or that disease, then the immune response is much greater and faster than it would have been if it was a first encounter.
Okay.
And for some, this immunity lasts for quite a long time. For some, it's a shorter time, but it then helps to prevent either serious effects of that disease or prevent establishment of the disease or prevent disability associated with that illness.
Okay.
In terms of the schedule, it differs depending on which region of the world you're in, because of course also diseases follow a certain distribution, especially infectious diseases. So when it comes to like Kenya and most of Africa, we start vaccination at birth. So we start with the BCG, the oral polio, and the hepatitis B vaccine. And then we have 6, 10, 14-week visits where they are covered for a number of diseases. We have the pentavalent vaccine that covers for diseases like diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, what we call Haemophilus influenza B, hepatitis B, and then they also get the pneumococcal vaccines at the same time, and also get the rotavirus vaccines. And the idea is to be able to catch them at those clinic visits so that you're able to give the vaccines then. And therefore, quite a number of them are put together at the same time. And then later on, of course, there are other vaccines at 6 months, the flu vaccine, at 9 months, the measles vaccine, at 10 months, the meningococcal vaccine. At 15 months, there's some vaccines that they may receive. And then at 1 year, you can get the yellow fever, hepatitis A vaccine, the varicella vaccine, which is the chickenpox vaccine. And then at 2 years, there are other vaccines, and at 5 years, there are some boosters that they're given with the thinking that they're getting into school now, and there'll be a lot of exposure because of contact with their peers. And this is sort of to boost their immunity so that if they encounter those infectious agents, then they're able to sort of fight off the infections because of the immunity they've been given.
All right. And then I'll come back to you. I mean, I'm pretty sure you've had this from either parents or just, the community at large, where they say, listen, there's also this other thing about natural immunity, where you leave a child, akakule mchanga, you know how kids are sometimes, right? Or let them stay out in the rain so that, that they can get the immunity. So I don't know how true that is. But before you answer that, let's speak to Dr. Collins very quickly. I mean, there's a pull-out, not even a pull-out, like an entire segment on Healthy Nation, on Daily Nation's paper yesterday. And one of the things that, was highlighted are some of the counties, with the highest percentage as far as vaccinations are concerned. And of course, like Vihiga, Murang'a, Tharaka Nithi, Nyandarua, Nakuru, Kakamega, Embu, Nandi, Uasin Gishu, and Kisii. These are like, top 10 counties with highest number of vaccinations. But we also have Kwale, Isiolo, Marsabit, Samburu, Kajiado, Turkana, Wajir, West Pokot, Mandera, and Garissa, who are on the bottom. As far as vaccination are concerned. And if you look at this, the bottom 10 counties, as far as immunizations or vaccinations are concerned, there's a bit of a similarity, in terms of, the region. Most of these regions are actually ASAL regions. So, and I know Dr. Ann actually mentioned a bit of resource, which is one of the major challenges that, would affect some of these regions, when it comes to vaccination. So what are some of these other challenges that, some regions might experience when it comes to vaccination, especially this bottom 10?
Yeah, so thank you. If you look at, and thank you for that question once more. If you look at these bottom 10 counties, like you rightly observed, they have a common factor. Most of them are arid and semi-arid lands. So it means that individuals have to travel long distances to access health services. Individuals have to forego other other earning opportunities to be able to forego to attend to vaccination. So it's basically an opportunity cost to them. But beyond that, these are also counties that have been ravaged by the drought. So in terms of competing priorities for the communities, even as they try to protect their children from these diseases, there's also the need for them to seek water, seek pasture for their animals, seek then food for themselves. So big challenge in terms of geographical access, a big challenge in terms of their livelihoods. They are also among the most impoverished, and therefore they have to weigh in between earning a livelihood and taking children for vaccination. But beyond this, because of their vast lands, again, these regions also tend to be amongst those that have limited capacity to offer vaccination services in terms of cold chain capacity. The vast distances means that they have less health facilities. The health facilities are not electrified, do not have electric, they do not have electricity, and therefore setting up infrastructure for immunization, like cold chain equipment, vaccines must be kept between 2 to 8 degrees centigrade, is a challenge. In these regions also, there is a strong element of hesitancy arising from misinformation, from community religious or misconceptions about vaccines, therefore. And especially when they're closely knit, these are closely close societies, then this creeps in with a lot of hesitancy within these areas, and the result in low coverage rates. There are also communities that have a lot of mobile populations. People move in search of pasture, people move in search of water, and there's also quite a bit of conflict in these communities. You're looking at Samburu, you're looking at West Pokot, you're looking at the border with Somalia. So the conflict situation results in a bit of internal displacement, movement of people, such that people then move and miss out on critical life-saving interventions. So these are the big elements that contribute to these particular counties being behind or being the bottom 10 and as far as immunization is concerned.
Okay. All right. And of course, under the theme this year, and this is as far as the World Immunization Week is concerned, it's the big catch-up, right? So the big question is how much, to what extent would you say we need to catch up? And of course, that also, you might not really talk about what the government is doing because, again, UNICEF, but you're also working hand in hand with the government. Today there's that launch for the Immunization Week. But when it comes to the catch up, first of all, what would you say needs to be done, and to what extent? Where are we in the country, given the disruptions from COVID-19, amongst other challenges that have been experienced before?
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, our immunization coverage had stagnated for a long time. But just before COVID, we were vaccinating about 90% of our children who by their first birthday, 91%, so to speak. But during the COVID-19 pandemic, we had a 5% slide in the immunization coverage in the country, so that we now were able to stretch about 86%. So whereas before COVID, we were missing about 150,000 to 200,000 children, during COVID alone, there were an additional 78,000 children missed out within the country. While this looks like a small number, if these children exist in clusters, or more that they actually come from the most disadvantaged of communities, most deprived of communities, then this is a time bomb in terms of disease outbreaks. So in terms of catch-up, first of all, UNICEF is supporting the government efforts to be able to map where these children are and have tailored strategies. Within the next 1 or 2 months, you'll be seeing outreaches implemented within the counties to be able to, first of all, reach these children who missed the vaccinations during the last 3 years because of the impact of COVID. Most of these children have never received any vaccines, and therefore they are zero-dose communities. So we basically are supporting the government efforts to establish systems to be able to reach these children, bring them back into care, and ensure that they are protected and that they do not just survive, but that they thrive and live happy, healthy lives. Once this is done, then it is a bigger effort to restore the coverage, the immunization coverage within the country in the year 2023 to the rates that it were before the COVID-19 pandemic. It means that then we have to restore immunization coverage to 90% and above. So this requires a series of concerted efforts, significant investments, and huge political commitment to move this forward. And of course, as UNICEF and all of the health partners, we will walk the talk to support the country in that initiative. And of course, having done this, COVID-19 COVID-19 taught us lessons. It was an opportunity to strengthen our health systems, but of course, there's also going to be strong initiatives from UNICEF supporting the government to be able to strengthen the immunization systems, but within the context of the primary healthcare system and as part of the government's agenda, UHC priorities, so that we build the resilience of our programs and that it's able to withstand the shocks of future pandemics should they arise or any other emergencies, that we do not witness a backslide in immunization or that we do not have children again missing out on these critical services.
Absolutely. And I know I need to release you by around 8:30, so I don't know if you can add me a little bit of more time, but it's okay if you really need to have to jump off at exactly 8:30. But I'd want you to answer, this whole aspect about, we've talked about so many things, especially when it comes to the challenges affecting the ASAL regions. One of them is the fact that, some of these people actually have to move from point A to point B. So again, when it comes to vaccination, sometimes there might be a disruption when it comes to the schedule. So is it time then we change tact and make sure that you deal with, or we deal with specific regions and have like tailor-made solutions just to make sure that all the children, do not miss out or, either partially or completely miss out on immunization? Very quickly, because we need to go on a break, but I don't know if you can add me more time when it comes from the break.
That's all right.
Okay.
I can do that. Yes.
Oh, very well. Okay. So let's take that break, and then when we come back, you can answer that. Is that okay?
That's all right.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Collins. Okay, so let's take that break. But of course, if you have any other question as far as immunization is concerned, at NTV Kenya, both on Facebook and on Twitter is how you can reach us. Or better yet, give us a call. Our lines are open. But, more conversation is coming up after the break. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. The show is Your World, 34 minutes past. Of course, we're having a very important conversation as far as immunization is concerned. And like we said, every last week of April, the world marks Immunization Week. And of course, this is a very important week because, again, it's a reminder, for all of us, first of all, to really understand immunization, how important it is, at what age should we start having our children immunized? Because, like we mentioned during the first part of the conversation, we see a lot of children who are partially or completely missing out on immunization. And how much of a concern is this and how much of a danger is this? That is what we are discussing today. So like I said, if you have any other question as far as immunization is concerned, feel free at NTV Kenya, both on Facebook and on Twitter is how you can reach us. Or better yet, give us a call. And of course, if you have any concern or any question, my panel will be able to answer, your questions as far as immunization is concerned. So, Dr. Collins, very quickly, of course, those a question, and this is as far as should we have specific, ways or approaches so that we target the ASAL groups, because again, like we said, I think we were discussing this during the break, where again, health, this is like a basic human right, and everybody has a right to the highest attainable standards as far as healthcare is concerned. Then that disparity between other regions who are doing so well when it comes to immunization for the children and others are not doing so well. So is it time that we change tacts or have like a specific approach so that we make sure all the children are vaccinated?
Yes, you're absolutely right. We do not have a one-size-fits-all in terms of immunization service delivery, and these would not be able to deliver results or to deliver for the Kenyan child if we went about it like that. Like I did share before, most of these children that are missed come from the most deprived and disadvantaged communities. Most of these communities, like you observed, are nomadic, pastoral communities in the ASAL areas, refugee populations. But one other important component is the communities that live in urban informal settlements. These are mostly affected. So the country has diverse communities, diverse religions, and largely cosmopolitan. So we need to have to tailor context-specific strategies to be able to reach these children. Once we've been able to understand who these children that are missed are, what are their characteristics, where do they exist, and what are their barriers to being able to access immunization or to take up vaccination, then we need to be able to tailor strategies to reach these children. In the context of the ASAL areas, geographical barriers and others being a lot more, there could be consideration specifically to tailored outreaches tailored to the lifestyles of these ASAL communities, outreaches tailored to their migration patterns, outreaches tailored to their settlements and all of that, but of course that are set up or are scheduled with community participation. But also for them and for the urban informal settlements, there's also an element of being able to schedule vaccinations out of the ordinary working hours. We offer vaccinations the weekdays, 8 to 5. Perhaps it's time to consider offering immunizations even beyond the working hours, after 5 p.m. or on weekends when these mothers that would be out there earning a living are able to bring their children for vaccination. But beyond this, also, there are places that we do not have, for instance, strong presence of the public health sector there, like we do not have public health facilities. It may perhaps help within these communities to partner with the local community-based organizations, partner with the NGOs or faith-based health facilities or private health facilities, so that we build their capacity and empower them to be able to offer the vaccination services to our communities on behalf of the government. And like that, we do drive the ownership of this as well. And of course, to be able to work most efficiently is to look the whole realm, because we then do not just want to reach these communities with vaccines and leave behind other services. So it would be most efficient to look at the whole realm of services or interventions that these communities need or that these communities are receiving beyond health. This goes to maybe their livestock, veterinary services, food distribution or drought mitigation measures, to be able to integrate vaccination services within this for efficiency and for maximum reach. And of course, I wouldn't end this without saying empowering our women and empowering our girls would go a long way to ensure that our communities are protected.
Absolutely. I mean, there's that call of having partners, husbands accompanying the wives or the moms when taking their children to get vaccinated, so that everybody is involved. So it's not like a mom or women's thing for the same. Okay. So Dr. Anne, before we went on a break, there's that question of natural immunity versus, just letting the child be. And a lot of people would say, let them play in the rain, let them catch a cold, let them, kule mchanga and all sorts of things so that builds their immunity. I don't know what.
Well, before the advent of vaccines, of course, natural immunity has always played a huge role in protecting children and individuals against diseases. The only difference is that when it comes to vaccination, there's a way the vaccines are designed so that they stimulate a very long-lasting and larger immune response, in the sense that the body is able to correctly identify the agent that's causing the disease and come up with specific immune responses to those diseases, and they last much longer. So they're combined with what we call adjuvants that make them very potent in terms of making the immune response come about. So natural immunity, yes, is something that will give protection, but not to the degree that active immunization and vaccines can.
I hear you. All right. So maybe for the first-time moms, we're like, okay, so when is the first time that I need to take my child for immunization, just in case one missed out on the schedule that we talked about earlier on?
First, the day they're born, immediately just take the baby for vaccinations. But there's also what we usually emphasize for healthcare workers is at first contact with the child. If you know that this child has missed some vaccines, then you have to start the vaccination from that point. And if it's possible, ensure follow-up so that either there are reminders that are sent, or if you're in a community, then you send out health workers or community health workers to just give reminders of the vaccines that need to be given for those children at particular ages.
All right. And for those ones who maybe have missed, right? Because I think we addressed this during the first part where we said some children partially miss out or others completely miss out. So for those ones who have partially missed out on vaccinations, again, what could happen if you do not completely get, these other vaccines, right? And can you maybe like go back? Because again, there are specific vaccines that are administered at specific, ages or months, right? So then if one misses out, and let's say the child is like 2 years, 3 years, maybe 5 years, can they still get the vaccines?
It depends on the vaccine, because the vaccines where we say, okay, this child has already been exposed to this particular disease conditions. I can use an example of the BCG vaccine. Above 5 years, it doesn't make a lot of sense to give it. Well, someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But the idea is, if within whatever age you get the child, that vaccine is appropriate. So it doesn't have to have a strict timing, but also it depends on the vaccine. So you give the vaccine at that point. In terms of what will happen if you don't complete the doses, the reason why certain vaccines are given in multiple doses is because with every dose it increases the level of the immune response, and it increases the immunity. So you have less protection. If a vaccine is supposed to be given 3 doses, if you get 1 dose, you have less protection than the person who got 3 doses, which means you're at a higher risk. Okay, of course, you're better off than the person who didn't get the vaccine, but you're definitely at a higher risk than the person who gets all the 3 doses of the vaccine. So catch-up vaccinations can be done. It might depend on the type of vaccine, but many of the vaccines can actually be given to the child when they present at the facility.
All right. Is there like a cutoff age? I know, like you said, 5 might not. I mean, after 5, might
depending
not really make sense.
on the disease you're trying to protect them from. In this setting of ours, since we're exposed to the bacteria that causes TB, within our environment, then at a certain age, it stops making sense to give the vaccine. So you target more of the under 5 than those who are above.
I see that. And then some parents have also expressed concern as far as reactions, from vaccines are concerned. And I know back then there were a lot of reports about, children who got really, really sick, and others unfortunately died. But I think that was resolved. That was like years and years ago, over like 10 years ago. But are there some vaccines that maybe, or some reactions that are sort of like expected when it comes to vaccinations? I know the fever thing, many parents do not like that at all. Right, but aside from that, are there like just reactions that are to be expected, but then beyond that, maybe, further interventions might be needed?
Well, the more common reactions, which happen with most vaccines, are the fever that you've mentioned, pain or swelling around the injection site. There are people who might have allergic reactions to some of the components of the vaccine. So those are the more common reactions that are noted. So vaccines are actually safe because they've been taken through many tests, many studies, many trials to see their safety profile, to see what doses would give you the best immunity. So these are things that have been scrutinized before they're released into the population. So there are, of course, very rare side effects that we don't consider too much because they only happen if an individual is predisposed to a certain condition or a certain reaction. But the more common ones are those ones: pain at the injection site, swelling, redness around that area, and fever.
Okay.
So
all right. So there's some things that you can. So then, what do you do? Like administer maybe like painkillers or something? Just
there's been an argument. I know mothers like using Panadol a lot. Because of the fear of my child is going to have so much pain. There's going to be a lot of fever.
Others say you administer it before.
but we discourage that. What we say is that when you get a fever, then just expose the child and allow the temperature to come down on its own. And only if it's absolutely necessary do you give that, because there have been some theories that some of these painkillers, paracetamol and all that, interfere with the vaccine in some way. And I mean, you're better off just exposing the child and allowing the temperature to come down than giving something that might lead to the response not being as good as you want it
as
to be.
is expected.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Just I mean, the body knows what it's supposed to do, right? And just allow them to go through them. They will be okay after the fever and the pain at the injection site. Okay, but on a larger population, Dr. Collins, how much of important are immunizations or vaccination, if we can, in terms of protecting the entire population, from diseases or ailments?
You have to repeat that again? I missed you out a bit. Broke out the connection.
Yeah, we were talking about, like, on a larger scale, how important is it to just make sure that, children are vaccinated? Because I know there's some diseases, or infections that, might be dangerous or contagious. So when it comes to, like vaccinations, how much, of an impact will it have to a particular community and, the entire nation, if we can say that?
Yeah, so thank you so much. It is important, again, like you've stated, to ensure that the children get all the vaccines that are due to them. The vaccines, as in the schedule, and as it is tailored for maximum impact. The schedule is tailored such that the vaccines achieve the maximum effectiveness, so that you have the maximum efficacy, and so that the children get the maximum benefit from the schedule as it is. Again, the schedule as it is tailored so that we reduce the number of visits, we minimize the number of visits while maximizing the protection for the child, so that the vaccines that can be given together are actually combined and given together. Now, if a child does not receive all the vaccines that are due to them, it means that that child is not fully or fully protected from that particular disease as it would be envisaged. It means that that child would be able to suffer disease and perhaps the complications of that disease, and even perhaps risk death from that particular disease. Now, when we do vaccinate, why it's important again to ensure that all the children get all the vaccines that are due to them, and that we get as much coverage as we can, is because the vaccines do not just protect the individual, but they protect the community that is beyond the individual. If we have a critical number of people within a community that are vaccinated, then we're able to have a critical mass of people that are immune from this particular childhood killer diseases, and therefore if this disease was introduced in the community, it is not able to spread, because then it finds that many people are vaccinated. So you might find that a few people may not be vaccinated, but they may be protected by that hard effect or by being part of a bigger community that has then been vaccinated. But then what would happen if the few people that have not been vaccinated then stay in their own communities, what we call zero-dose communities, or communities that have not been effectively vaccinated? It means that the hard effect does not then apply. It means that if a disease, it's a virus, bacteria that is being protected against is introduced in that particular community, that the community then suffers an outbreak, and this spreads very fast because yes, we might have a huge high national coverage, many people vaccinated nationally, but the few people that are not vaccinated exist in clusters, in small communities that are disadvantaged, and therefore they're able to sustain outbreaks. This is the situation we have seen with the measles outbreaks that have happened in the recent past. We've also had yellow fever outbreaks that have happened in the recent past in the country. So it is very important to ensure that you get the maximum benefit of vaccines by ensuring that you get all the vaccines that are due to you or to the child at for that particular age.
All right. And then there's some conditions, or diseases or illnesses, that we used to hear a lot about, back then. And then I think, was it sometime last year, and especially when it comes to polio, where of course there was a bit of a conversation around the same, either last year or the year before, conversation around the same, and of course vaccines were also, rolled out, and especially to the children. And I know majority of the parents were like, but my child has already been vaccinated. So could you speak on those instances where, we might need to also, vaccinate in as much as, yes, your child was vaccinated before, but there has been, a report or two here and there as far as a particular disease is concerned. So the need to also, vaccinate everybody. Could you speak on the same?
Yes, no, thank you. So your child may have been vaccinated, say, for measles, your child may have been vaccinated for polio. But remember, as a world and as UNICEF, we're supporting the country to be able to eliminate or eradicate some of these diseases. So polio is one of the diseases that is targeted for eradication world over. Now, even if a child was vaccinated, remember that most vaccines do not have an efficacy of 100%. Most of them, like the polio vaccine, might be just about 95% efficacy. So it means that for every 100 children that may be vaccinated, about 5 of them may not develop sufficient enough immunity to be able to withstand or to be able to be protected from the polio virus. Now, you don't know whether at any one time after vaccination, whether you are part of this 5%. And you are not able to vaccinate and then take a child back to a lab and say, do I want to check my child whether they are being protected or they're not being protected? Sometimes the protection wins. So in the interest of being able to eradicate diseases, we do often come back with mass vaccination campaigns so that we mop up the few individuals then who may have been missed out, who may not have developed immunity from vaccination, and therefore to make sure that the whole community is protected. And this is in the direction to eradicate such diseases as polio. For measles, for example, you may find that you vaccinate people and just about 85% of the people that you vaccinate develop immunity. So it means for every 100 children you vaccinate, 15 of those children do not develop immunity sufficient enough to protect them from measles disease. But then if you also look at another 20% who have been missed altogether, or 10% that have been missed altogether by the immunization program that did not receive a vaccine. So it means for every 100 children, about 25 are not protected from measles. So for us to be able to prevent the buildup of these people or children that are non-immune, it means that periodically then we must be able to have mass vaccination campaigns where we give every child, regardless of their previous regardless of the status of immunization, a second opportunity to be vaccinated and to be protected from these killer diseases. It means, therefore, that children, whether they're vaccinated or not, will need to be vaccinated again. So this is what happens when you have polio mass vaccination campaigns, when you have measles mass vaccination campaigns, and even yellow fever vaccination campaigns and others, so to speak. Thank you.
Because a lot of parents would say, all these vaccines that you're introducing to my child's body might affect them in one way or the other, but it's important, right? Just to make sure that they're well protected. Okay.
It's very important.
All right, and I'll come back to you, Dr. Collins, to also comment on HPV, but I think I'm just going to begin with you, Dr. Anne. Because a lot of parents were like, so what's going to happen if we give our young girls, the HPV vaccine? Why are we giving them? There were so many questions and a lot of concerns, right? So could you just highlight very quickly how important, first of all, it is for these young girls, to get vaccinated with the HPV? Because like you said initially, vaccines are meant to protect, not to do harm, right? And that is one thing that, everybody should really know as far as vaccinations are concerned. But this particular age and why it's important for them to get vaccinated.
The HPV vaccine protects against infection from the human papilloma virus. That's what HPV stands for. So this particular vaccine has what we call protection against specific serotypes. Serotypes are the various strains of that particular virus. And included in those serotypes are those that are known to cause cervical cancer or issues around the anus and genital area. And therefore, the importance of this vaccine is that it is able to prevent infection with those particular serotypes. If you've never been infected, it prevents you from getting that infection. And therefore, moving forward, it prevents you from getting the cervical cancer, it prevents you from getting warts and all that. And the protection has been said to be up to 98%. So imagine a vaccine that is actually able to prevent cancer. I mean, that is one of the greatest breakthroughs, I think, in terms of vaccination. Something that can actually prevent a disease that leads to death, that leads to a lot of morbidity and decreased quality of life. And what we need to remember is that the HPV vaccine is not only for girls, it should be given also to boys. And the reason why we target those lower age groups is because of the thinking that these are individuals who've not had their sexual debut yet, and therefore have probably not been exposed to those strains of the HPV virus. And this then offers them protection, so that if they then have an encounter where there might be transmission, then it doesn't occur, and therefore they don't have the risk of getting the effects of the virus and what it does to the cells of the body and the predisposition to cancer, especially in females. But the boys also benefit, because there are also warts that they get, there are also changes they get in the cells that are also related to cancerous lesions, and they also transmit the virus to their partners later on in life. So you're using a two-pronged approach to sort of prevent transmission of this virus that has been shown to cause cervical cancer.
Absolutely. All right. So Dr. Collins, do you want to comment on this? I mean, especially when it comes to uptake, what can be done to also encourage the uptake of the same, and that is HPV, and of course there's a conversation from the health ministry, and this is to continue with the rollout as far as the malaria vaccine is concerned. And I know our time is far much spent. Jackson is like, you guys need to get out. So could you do that maybe in like 45 seconds?
Yeah, so thank you so much. So we need to do more as a country, especially in the interest of our girls, our women, to be able to protect them from cervical cancer. As it is now, just about 63% of the girls that are 10 years old every year receive the HPV vaccines. So we have a huge number that have not been protected out there. 35% receive 2 doses. So almost 450,000 girls that are 10 years of age are not fully protected against cervical cancer. So this is a bit worrisome, especially if we look to protect our girls and women from cancer. In terms of the malaria vaccine, the country did introduce the malaria vaccine pilot in 2019. From that time to date, more than 1.1 million doses of the vaccines have been given. These vaccines are being given within the lake endemic regions of Western Kenya. This is Kakamega, Bungoma, Vihiga, Busia, Kisumu, and Homa Bay, Migori. And about 79% of the children that are within these regions have received at least 1 dose, and at least 70% of these children have received at least 3 doses. This is very encouraging. But for our girls and our children, being able to protect them from these killer diseases, it means we must get a bit more deliberate as communities. We must take more ownership of the immunization program to decrease or work on reducing the hesitancy within communities and encourage our girls, our caregivers, to bring their children and girls for vaccination, because then that is the only way we can assure them to have a happy and healthy life in which they thrive in the future.
Absolutely. We want all that for our children. Dr. Collins, allow me to take that as your parting shot. And Dr. I'll just give you like 15 seconds. Sure. Your message to the people during this immunization week, literally 10 seconds.
Okay. So all I want to say is that vaccines are important, and they are one of the most one of the greatest public health interventions that has been brought to the world in the sense of protecting children and individuals against infections. And therefore, it's important to follow the schedules, and this is specifically for the parents, and ensure that your children get all the vaccines that are recommended to ensure that they're protected against these diseases that cause disability and can also cause death.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Dr. Ann-Peter Lomole, Consultant Pediatrician and Infectious Disease Specialist, as well as Dr. Collins Tabu, Immunization Specialist, UNICEF Kenya Country Office. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming. And of course, also Dr. Collins, for extending your time for this very important conversation. Asante sana. And of course, thank you really for staying with us until the end of the show. I know you've learned a lot. If you have missed out or your child has missed out on vaccination, again, you can just make sure go to a hospital and have some bit of consultation and see what can be done. But at the end of the day, let's have all our children immunized. All right. So my name is Winnie Lubembe. Have yourselves a lovely day ahead, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, same time, same place, right here on Your World. But until then, stay safe and God bless. Goodbye. Thank you.